All right, so we're diving into second order thinking this time.
Yeah.
Looks like you're ready to kind of go beyond those gut reactions
Mm-hmm.
and really kind of level up your decision making.
For sure.
It's all about asking that crucial "and then what?" question, right?
Right.
Thinking about the consequences that kind of ripple out beyond that immediate impact.
Yes.
We're talking hidden risks,
Yeah,
unexpected opportunities, the
absolutely.
kind of stuff most people completely miss.
It's fascinating how often our brains just default to that instant gratification mode,
Yeah.
that first order thinking.
Right.
But the real strategic advantage,
Mhm.
as you're exploring here, lies in training ourselves to just pause
Yeah.
and really consider those second and third order effects.
Exactly. It's like we're conditioned for that quick dopamine hit,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes that can lead us down a path we totally didn't intend.
Yeah.
One of the sources you sent uses a quote that really stuck with me.
Okay.
"The road to hell is paved with good intentions and first-order thinking."
Oh, yeah.
It seems like those impulsive decisions, they can seem brilliant at the time,
Right.
but without considering the longer-term consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's just say things can go south pretty quickly.
It's true. And the sources you've gathered
Yeah?
offer some pretty compelling examples of this in action.
Okay.
Take the 2008 housing bubble, for instance. Banks were approving subprime mortgages left and right,
Mm-hmm.
raking in those short-term profits.
Yeah.
But did they stop to consider the potential for mass defaults
Right.
and the just catastrophic impact on the entire economy?
Yeah.
Not so much.
That's a stark reminder
Yeah.
of what can happen when we prioritize those immediate gains
Right.
without thinking through the potential consequences.
For sure.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty here.
Okay.
Our expert sources
Mm-hmm.
make a clear distinction between first-order and second-order thinking.
Right.
Help me understand this.
Okay.
It can't be as simple as good decision versus bad decision, right?
Right. It's more about the depth of your analysis.
Okay,
Think of it like this.
okay,
You see a delicious chocolate cake.
okay.
First order thinking says, eat the cake, it'll make you happy.
Yeah.
Perfectly reasonable wrong.
Yeah, sure.
But second order thinking
Mm-hmm.
prompts you to consider, what happens after I eat the cake?
Oh.
Will I feel sluggish later? What if this becomes a habit? How will it impact my long-term health goals?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not about denying yourself pleasure, but
Mhm.
about making informed choices.
Right.
Like considering the potential trade-offs.
It's,
Speaking of trade-offs,
yeah.
one of the areas where this really hits home
Mm-hmm.
is personal finance.
Yes.
Your sources use the example of buying a luxury car.
Right.
It's a classic example of how our desires can cloud our judgment.
Exactly. That new car smell.
Yeah.
The envious looks from your neighbors.
Right.
Those first-order rewards are pretty tempting.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But a second-order thinker
Mm-hmm.
would pause and ask, can I comfortably afford the monthly payments and insurance?
Right.
How will this purchase impact my savings goals?
Yeah.
Is there a less expensive option that still meets my needs?
It's about looking beyond that initial gratification
Yeah,
and considering the long-term financial consequences.
for sure.
And it's not just about avoiding negative outcomes.
Right. Yeah.
Our sources also talk about how second-order thinking can help us spot hidden opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like Warren Buffett, for example.
oh, yeah. Great
Now,
example.
he's known for buying undervalued stocks when everyone else is panicking and selling.
He's a master at seeing the bigger picture,
Right.
while others are focused on that immediate market volatility, that first-order fear.
Mm-hmm.
He's thinking about the long-term potential of those companies.
Yeah.
That second-order perspective has certainly paid off for him, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. He's a great example
Yeah,
of how second-order thinking can lead to remarkable success.
totally.
And then there's the whole concept of resilience. One of the articles you shared discusses how companies like Netflix were able to thrive because they anticipated changes in the market.
Right.
They saw the shift towards streaming, while Blockbuster was still clinging to their DVD rental model.
That's a classic case study in how second-order thinking can make or break a company.
Wow.
Netflix didn't just react to change, they
Yeah.
anticipated it.
Wow.
They asked themselves,
Mm-hmm.
what if people want more convenient ways to access movies?
Yeah.
What if technology disrupts the traditional rental model?
Right.
They were prepared for the future.
Yeah.
While Blockbuster, well, they became a cautionary tale.
They did.
Yeah.
So it seems like second-order thinking isn't just about making smarter decisions in the moment.
Right.
It's about developing a mindset
Yeah,
that allows us to adapt and thrive in a constantly changing world.
for sure.
But let's be honest,
Yeah,
it's easier said than done, right?
it is.
How do we actually get better at this? How do we move from understanding the concept to making it a part of our daily lives?
Well, the good news is there are some practical techniques we can use.
Okay.
One that I find particularly effective
Mm-hmm.
is the so what method.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah,
It sounds almost deceptively simple.
it is.
How does it work exactly?
It is simple,
Yeah.
but that's part of its brilliance.
Okay.
You make a decision,
Mm-hmm.
and then you ask yourself, so what?
Okay.
And you keep asking so what,
Okay.
like 3 to 5 times.
Got it.
Each time, digging a little deeper into the potential consequences.
Okay.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion,
Yeah.
revealing those hidden implications that might not be obvious at first glance.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure.
Let's say I'm feeling exhausted after work
Okay.
and decide to skip the gym today.
Mm-hmm.
On the surface, seems harmless enough.
Right. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'll skip the gym today.
Yeah.
So what?
Okay.
Well, I might miss out on that endorphin rush that helps me de-stress.
All right.
So what?
Okay.
If I make a habit of skipping workouts,
Mm-hmm.
I could lose momentum and motivation.
Yeah.
So what?
Keep going.
I might end up quitting my fitness goals altogether and jeopardizing my health.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Suddenly, that seemingly harmless decision
Right.
has some pretty significant potential downsides.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah. That puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
And that leads us to another technique our sources highlight,
Okay.
the decision journal.
Yeah.
This seems like a great way to become more aware of our decision-making pattern.
Absolutely. The idea is to write down your choices, your rationale for making them,
Okay.
and the outcomes you anticipate.
Right.
Then you revisit those entries later, maybe
Yeah.
a few months down the line,
Got it.
and see how your predictions matched up with reality.
Wow.
It's like having a feedback loop for your brain.
That's a fantastic way to see where our blind spots are,
Yeah.
where we might be overestimating the positives
Yeah.
or underestimating the negatives.
Yep.
I can see how that would be incredibly valuable
For sure.
in refining our judgment over time.
Absolutely.
There's another technique mentioned in the sources that I'm curious about.
Okay.
The premortem technique.
Yes.
This one sounds a bit morbid.
The name might sound a bit intimidating,
Yeah.
but it's actually a very powerful thought experiment.
Okay.
Essentially,
Mm-hmm.
you imagine that your decision has completely backfired.
Right.
It's a total disaster.
Okay.
Then you ask yourself, what went wrong?
Right.
What factors contributed to this failure?
Yeah.
What warning signs did I miss?
So it's like reverse engineering a bad outcome.
Exactly.
It forces you to think critically about potential pitfalls and consider all the things that could go wrong.
Precisely. It's about challenging your assumptions
Yeah.
and uncovering those blind spots that might be lurking beneath the surface.
Okay.
It's a great way to mitigate risk
Yeah.
and make more informed choices.
Speaking of learning from mistakes,
Yes.
our sources also talk about the importance of studying history.
Absolutely.
They highlight the example of Kodak, a company that was once a titan of the photography industry.
Right.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
They essentially buried the digital camera technology they invented to protect their film sales.
Right.
Talk about a first-order thinking blunder.
Exactly. They were so focused on protecting their existing business
Yeah.
that they completely missed the disruptive potential of digital photography. If they had applied some second-order thinking, they might have realized that embracing digital was the only way to ensure their long-term survival.
Yeah.
Instead, they became a cautionary tale about the dangers of clinging to the past.
Wow. It really drives home the point that even the most successful companies can fall prey to first-order thinking.
It's true.
It's a reminder that we all need to stay vigilant and challenge our assumptions,
For sure.
no matter how successful we are.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have
We've defined second-order thinking.
explored why it's so important
Yeah.
and even looked at some practical techniques for cultivating it.
Right.
But there's another aspect I want to touch on
Okay.
before we wrap up this part of the deep dive.
Yeah.
The idea of teaching others to think this way.
That's an important point.
Yeah.
The more people who are equipped with these skills, the better.
Right.
Imagine the impact it could have on families,
Yeah.
teams,
Yeah.
organizations, even society as a whole.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about creating a culture of thoughtful decision-making.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But how do we actually teach this?
Yeah,
It's not exactly something that's covered in most school curriculums.
true. But it doesn't have to be complicated.
Okay.
It's about finding ways to introduce the concept in relatable ways.
Okay.
For kids, it could be as simple as using everyday scenarios.
Okay.
Like, if you choose to watch TV instead of doing your homework, what might happen tomorrow?
What could happen when report card time comes around?
That's a great example.
Right.
It helps them see that chain reaction of choices.
Yeah.
And understand that their actions have consequences.
For sure.
Both immediate and long-term.
Absolutely.
And for teams, it could involve incorporating what-if scenarios into brainstorming sessions or project planning meetings.
Right.
Encouraging everyone to think critically about potential roadblocks and consider alternative approaches.
For sure.
So if a company is considering a price cut to boost sales, they might ask, what impact could this have on our brand perception? Will it attract the right kind of customers? Could it trigger a price war with competitors?
Precisely. It's about encouraging that what-if thinking and getting everyone to consider the potential downsides and unintended consequences before making a decision.
There's also that framework Jeff Bezos is known for, the regret minimization framework. It's about asking yourself, will I regret not doing this in 10 years?
That's a powerful question.
It is.
Because it shifts the focus from fear of failure to the potential for missed opportunity. It encourages us to be bold and take calculated risks.
Right.
But also to think carefully about the long-term implications of our choices.
It seems like second-order thinking is not just a personal skill.
Right.
It's something we can cultivate in others as well.
Absolutely.
It's about creating a culture of thoughtful decision-making, where people are encouraged to look beyond the immediate and consider the broader impact of their actions.
Absolutely. And while it might require a bit of effort and intentionality, the potential rewards are immense.
Okay, so before we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I want to address a common misconception that often comes up when people first encounter the concept of second-order thinking. It's the idea that it's all about ignoring the present and living solely for the future. That it's about denying yourself immediate gratification and becoming some kind of emotionless robot who only cares about long-term outcomes.
That's a great point to clarify.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely not about that at all.
Okay.
It's not about becoming a stoic who can't enjoy the simple pleasures of life.
Right.
It's about balance.
Okay.
It's about making intentional choices, understanding that sometimes you'll prioritize short-term happiness, and other times you'll prioritize those long-term goals.
One of the sources uses a great analogy.
Okay.
You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Right.
But with second-order thinking, you can get pretty darn close.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that there will be trade-offs and making those choices strategically in alignment with your values and your vision for the future.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that the future is inherently uncertain.
Right.
No matter how much we try to predict and anticipate,
Yeah.
there will always be unexpected events and unforeseen consequences.
For sure.
The world is a complex and dynamic system.
Right. Life is full of surprises.
It is.
Both good and bad.
Yeah.
So second-order thinking isn't about eliminating risk entirely.
Right.
It's about mitigating it. It's about making more informed decisions,
Yes.
understanding the potential consequences, and creating a more resilient and fulfilling life.
Well said. And as we move into the next part of our deep dive,
Okay.
we'll explore some more nuanced aspects of second-order thinking,
Right.
including its limitations and how to avoid the trap of analysis paralysis.
Okay.
We'll also delve into some real-world examples of how people have used this powerful mental model to achieve remarkable outcomes in various areas of their lives.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. All right, so we've established that second-order thinking can be a powerful tool for making smarter decisions, spotting hidden opportunities, and building resilience.
For sure.
But I'm curious, are there any downsides to this approach? Is there ever a time when second-order thinking might not be the best strategy?
That's a great question. It's important to remember that second-order thinking isn't a magic bullet.
Right.
Like any tool.
Yeah.
It has its limitations.
Yeah.
One scenario where it might not be the best approach is when you need to make a split-second decision.
Okay.
In an emergency, for example.
Right.
You don't have time to weigh all the potential consequences. You need to react instinctively.
That makes sense. It's like that fight or flight response kicking in.
Right.
There's no time to overthink it.
Exactly.
You just need to act.
And there are other situations where overthinking can actually lead to analysis paralysis.
Oh, yeah.
You get so caught up in considering every possible outcome that you end up frozen, unable to make a decision at all.
So it's about finding that balance, knowing when to apply that deep strategic thinking and when to trust your gut.
Yeah.
And I imagine there are times when even the most thorough second-order thinking can't account for all the variables.
Right.
The future is inherently unpredictable.
Right. Absolutely. No matter how much we try to predict and anticipate, there will always be unexpected events, unforeseen consequences.
Right.
The world is a complex and dynamic system.
So second-order thinking is about mitigating risk, not eliminating it entirely. It's about making more informed decisions.
For sure.
But it's not a guarantee of success.
Right.
I like that analogy. It's like playing chess.
Yeah.
You can think a few moves ahead, but you can't predict every possible counter move your opponent might make.
Exactly. There's always an element of chance involved.
Right.
But the more you practice that strategic thinking, the better equipped you are to navigate those complexities and make decisions that are more likely to lead to favorable outcomes.
I see.
One of the sources you sent makes an interesting point about how second-order thinking can be applied to investing.
Oh, I'd love to hear more about that. I'm always looking for ways to improve my financial decision-making.
Well, think about how most people approach investing.
Okay.
They see the market going up, they get excited, they buy in.
Yeah.
The market starts to dip.
Right.
They panic, they sell.
Makes sense.
It's very reactive.
Yeah.
Very emotional, driven by those first-order impulses.
Sounds familiar. I've definitely been guilty of that myself.
But a second-order thinker approaches investing with a different mindset.
Okay.
They understand that short-term market fluctuations are just noise.
Right.
They're more interested in a company's long-term growth potential.
Yeah.
Its competitive advantage, the strength of its management team.
So they're looking beyond the immediate hype or fear.
Right.
And focusing on the fundamentals.
Exactly.
They're thinking about where the company will be in 5, 10, even 20 years.
They're playing the long game, and while there are no guarantees in investing, this approach tends to lead to more consistent and sustainable returns over time.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's about shifting your focus from short-term gains to long-term value creation. It's about being patient and disciplined, even when the market is throwing you curveballs.
Exactly.
Speaking of resilience, one of the articles you shared really delved into how Netflix's second-order thinking enabled them to adapt and thrive in a rapidly changing industry.
Right.
They were able to foresee the shift towards streaming while their competitor, Blockbuster, remains stuck in the past.
That's a great example of how second-order thinking can give companies a competitive edge.
Yeah.
Netflix wasn't just reacting to change.
Right.
They were actively anticipating it.
Wow.
They were constantly asking themselves, what if?
Right.
What if people want to watch movies instantly without leaving their homes?
Right.
What if broadband internet becomes widely available and affordable? What if technology allows us to deliver content directly to consumers, bypassing traditional distribution channels?
It's fascinating how they were able to connect those dots and see the bigger picture.
Right.
While blockbusters remain focused on their existing business model, clinging to their brick-and-mortar stores and DVD rentals.
It's a classic case of a company being disrupted by a technology they didn't see coming.
Wow.
Or perhaps chose to ignore because it threatened their status quo.
Right.
Netflix, on the other hand, embraced those changes and positioned themselves to lead the new market.
It's a great example of how second-order thinking can be the difference between success and failure.
Absolutely.
In a rapidly evolving world.
It is.
Okay, so we've talked about the benefits, the potential downsides, and even some real-world applications of second-order thinking.
Yes.
But before we move on, I want to circle back to our listener and make sure they're walking away with some tangible takeaways they can apply to their own lives.
So what are some key takeaways our listeners should remember?
Well, first and foremost, cultivate that habit of asking, and then what?
Okay.
Make it a part of your decision-making process. Whether you're considering a major life change, a financial investment, or even just what to have for dinner.
Okay.
That simple question can trigger a cascade of insights that might not be obvious at first glance.
It's about training yourself to think beyond the immediate.
Right.
And consider the ripple effects of your choices.
Right.
And remember those practical techniques we discussed earlier?
Yeah.
The so what method, the decision journal,
Right.
the pre-mortem technique.
Absolutely.
Experiment with them and find what works best for you.
Exactly. And remember, second-order thinking isn't about becoming a cold, calculating machine.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance between thoughtful analysis and trusting your intuition.
Okay.
Sometimes you need to go with your gut, and that's okay.
It's about developing that self-awareness.
Knowing when to apply that deep strategic thinking and when to trust your instincts.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to emphasize that second-order thinking is a skill that develops over time.
It is.
It's not something you master overnight.
Absolutely, the more you practice it.
Yeah.
The better you become at anticipating those consequences and making decisions that are aligned with your long-term goals.
Right.
It's an ongoing journey, not a destination.
So be patient with yourself. Embrace the learning process. And don't be afraid to make mistakes along the way.
Right.
Those mistakes can be valuable learning opportunities.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this part of the deep dive.
Yeah.
We've explored some of the nuances of second-order thinking, its limitations, and its real-world applications. But before we wrap up completely, I want to leave our listener with a final thought.
Okay.
This one comes directly from one of the sources you sent, and it really resonated with me.
I'm intrigued. What is it?
It's a simple question.
Okay.
But it has the potential to unlock some profound insights and perhaps even inspire some positive action.
Okay.
The question is this: is there a decision you've been putting off because the short-term consequences feel overwhelming?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I can see how that ties into everything we've been talking about.
Right, because often
Yeah.
we avoid those tough decisions because we're focused on the immediate discomfort, the potential for conflict, the fear of failure.
Exactly.
But what if we applied that and then what thinking to the decision itself?
Oh.
What if we considered the long-term benefits of taking action,
Yeah.
even if it's uncomfortable in the short term?
I love that it's like reframing procrastination as a missed opportunity.
Right.
It's about shifting your perspective from fear to possibility.
Exactly. It might be a difficult conversation you need to have, a project you've been procrastinating on, or maybe even a big life change you've been dreaming of, but haven't had the courage to pursue.
By shifting our focus to those potential long-term rewards, the relief, the growth, the fulfillment, we might find the motivation we need to finally take action.
So I challenge our listener to take a moment this week and apply the so what method to one decision they've been avoiding.
That's great.
Consider those second, third, even fourth order consequences.
You might be surprised by what you uncover.
Yeah.
And who knows that one decision reframed through the lens of second order thinking might just be the catalyst for a positive transformation in your life.
Now that's a powerful thought to leave our listener with as we head into the final part of this deep dive. It's amazing how sometimes that initial hurdle, that fear of the unknown can just totally hold us back from making the changes we need to make.
For sure.
But as we've explored in this deep dive, second-order thinking can help us reframe those challenges. See them as stepping stones on the path to something greater.
It's like that saying, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
I like that.
Sometimes that treasure is a sense of accomplishment, a greater understanding of ourselves, or simply the peace of mind that comes from knowing you made a difficult choice.
Yeah.
But you made it with intention and awareness.
This deep dive has certainly given me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of my own decision-making, but also how we can encourage others to think more strategically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether it's having those what-if conversations with loved ones or guiding teams through complex challenges at work, it seems like second-order thinking can have a ripple effect.
It does.
Far beyond ourselves.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be a formal process.
Right.
Think about how we teach kids about consequences.
Okay.
Every time a child learns that touching a hot stove leads to a burn, they're engaging in a basic form of second-order thinking. They're starting to understand that their actions have consequences that extend beyond the immediate moment.
That's a great point. It's like we're all capable of second-order thinking on some level, but it's about consciously developing and refining that skill, applying it to more complex situations.
Absolutely. One of the sources you sent emphasize that second-order thinking is especially valuable in today's world, where things are changing at an unprecedented pace.
It's true, we're bombarded with information.
We are.
Faced with countless choices. And the stakes seem higher than ever before.
They do. It's easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of the present moment.
Right.
But second-order thinking allows us to step back. Gain some perspective and make choices that are aligned with our long-term goals and values.
It's about being proactive rather than reactive, creating the future we want rather than simply responding to the circumstances that life throws our way.
And it all starts with that simple question. And then what? It's a question that can challenge our assumptions, broaden our perspective, and empower us to make more informed and intentional choices.
Well said to our listener. We hope this deep dive into second-order thinking has sparked some aha moments and given you some practical tools you can use to navigate the complexities of life and work.
Absolutely.
We encourage you to keep exploring those second-order consequences, to challenge your assumptions, and to make those bold decisions that lead to a more fulfilling and impactful life.
Because the world needs more people who can see beyond the immediate. Who can anticipate those ripple effects. And who can create a better future, not just for themselves, but for generations to come.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and keep those brains buzzing.